Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Mazza on Mets, where we talk everything New York Mets, from games and series and recaps and news and pretty much everything to do with the New York Mets and their 2025 MLB season and beyond. Last time on the show, we was our introductory. It was our first time. We talked about the thrilling win that the Mets had over the Colorado Rockies, the uh, struggles of runners in scoring position, Lindor's heroics, Pete Alonso's heroics. And we also talked about how the fact that the Mets needed to kind of reassert their dominance, so to speak, reassert their dominance and really take it to these kind of teams, take it to a team like the Colorado Rockies, right? You know, the Mets had struggled. They've won the games again, like I said before in the last episode. They've won the games, but not in convincing manner. They've beaten the Pittsburgh Pirates, but had to battle it out to win those two games. They beat the Chicago White Sox, but had to battle it out to win those two games. They had to battle it out to win two games against the Miami Marlins. They split the Washington Nationals. We'll talk more about the Nationals at the end of the show. Um, the last series against the Colorado Rockies, again, they swept them in Citi Field, but again, they kind of had to battle it out to win at least two of those games. And in the latest, and in the first game of this three-game series at Coors Field over the weekend, the Mets again had to battle it out, had to battle it out, had to battle it out. And in a series where in a game where they struggled to score runners in scoring position, they were 0 for 10, 0 for 9. And then Alonso comes through, and then Lindor comes off the bench, didn't start, broken pinky toe and all, and he comes through. And the Mets ended up pulling out a win. They ended up winning the game 4-2. The point was they really needed to kind of come out the next 2 days and reassert, show who you are. Take care of business against the Rockies. Don't give the Rockies any, you know, you know, a win, so to speak. Just try to really get in there and take it to them early and put the game away early. And that was what we talked about and that was what we talked about last time. And here we are 3 days later, or 2 days later, I should say. And that's exactly what the Mets did. The Mets went out there on Saturday and Sunday in Colorado and took it to the Rockies and completely outscored the Rockies. If my math is correct, 21-6. They defeated the Colorado Rockies 8-1 on Saturday, and then went out on Sunday and defeated them 13-5. That's what you got to do. That is what you got to do if you're the Mets. You got to face these teams that you know you're better than. You know that, I mentioned the Nationals and Marlins again, their division that is a little different, but still, those are teams that the Mets need to take, the Mets need to beat. But again, against a team like the Rockies, you got to reassert your dominance. You got to show that, yeah, we're a pretty good team. We're gonna come in there. We're gonna do what we got to do, and that's what the Mets did on Saturday in their 8-1 win over the Colorado Rockies, highlighted by Ronnie Mauricio's home run, Jared Young hitting a home run, Jeff McNeil hitting a home run. Clay Holmes had a very interesting start. We'll get to him in a second. But in this game on Saturday, the Mets and the Rockies, 8-1 win for the Mets. Mauricio, who hits a home run to start it off, puts the Mets up 1-0. Not only does he hit a home run, he sends that thing to the third deck. I didn't think that thing went that far. I didn't think this home run would travel as far as it did, but it's Coors Field, so I guess anything's possible. But Ronnie Mauricio hits this one to the third deck. One of the longest home runs the Mets, any Met will hit this. And actually, you know what? I take that back. That is the second. That is the second unreal long distance home run of this road trip. Pete Alonso, as we know, a few days ago in LA, hit that home run about 700 feet. In Los Angeles in the second game they beat the Dodgers in. So this was the second long distance home run hit by a Met this road trip. First Alonso in Los Angeles with the Dodgers. We'll get to more of Pete because he had a stellar Sunday. He had an unbelievable Sunday. He wasn't the only Met who had a stellar Sunday, but Pete was the big highlight. But Ronnie Mauricio sent that one to the third deck at Coors Field in right field. And you got to give credit to Ronnie Mauricio. He started off 0 for 10, coming from, after getting called up to the big leagues and off the Mark Vientos injury. Uh, not easy to debuted against Clayton Kershaw. He made his season debut against Clayton Kershaw. That is not easy. I know Kershaw may not be Kershaw, the Kershaw of old, but he's still Clayton Kershaw, and he's still pitching well for the Dodgers. Not an easy task for Ronnie Mauricio coming back after the injury last year, only getting September of 23 to play. He didn't play at all in the big leagues last year because of, again, the torn ACL he suffered. The torn ACL he had, and then he only had a couple of games in AAA this year before getting called up. So, it was, he was forced in there, and he starts off struggling. Starts off from that game on where he struggles, is over his first 10. Then he hits the double on Friday night, which he thought was a home run, and he's able to get out. He was able to get a double out of it. But then he gets the double on Friday night, and then he comes back with back-to-back pretty good games, and that started with him hitting a third deck home run at Coors Field. Great to see from Ronnie Mauricio. He starts off 0 for 10, and then he goes like 5 for his last 7 or 5 for his last 8. And he gets a couple of stolen with the home run, a couple singles and doubles, a couple of stolen bases. So great job by Ronnie Mauricio to bounce back from his 0 for 10 to start. And now he's 5 for his last 7, 5 for his last 8, got a couple of stolen bases, a monster home run. So good to see Ronnie Mauricio because he's really talented. We saw him in September of 2023. Ronnie Mauricio is really talented. He's very talented. And he's got a great arm on defense. So good to see from Ronnie Mauricio. Jared Young then hits the home run to the opposite field. Jeff McNeil hits a home run, and the Mets are off to the races. They win the game 8-1. Nimmo gets an RBI, McNeil gets the homer, and they're off to the races and win the game 8-1. So good for them good for them after they kind of had to battle out on Friday. Good for them to come back on Saturday and get a convincing win 8-1. And Clay Holmes was very interesting start from Holmes. Clay Holmes got hit up a bit. I don't think he got a 1-2-3 inning in this game. He got hit up a bit, but Clay Holmes still gets the win. He now goes to 7-3 on the season, 2.95 ERA. Clay Holmes went 6 innings, 9 hits, and 6 strikeouts. Gave up the home run to Ryan McMahon to the opposite field. But 9 hits, but was able to work his way out jams, 6 strikeouts. And I brought this up on the show last time. This was Clay Holmes' first time starting at Coors Field. Again, I know everyone goes, oh, it's the Rockies, it's the Rockies, it's the Rockies, it's the Rockies. I get it, it's the Rockies. I know. But Coors Field is one of the most difficult places for any starting pitcher to pitch in. There's a lot of things you got to take into account when you head to Coors Field. And the Mets had back-to-back outings where a guy pitched for the first time at that ballpark. First was Kodai Senga, which again, I didn't know that was Kodai's first start at Coors Field. I guess he didn't start there in 2023. That was according to Gary Cohen. But then was Clay Holmes. And you saw how the way Kodai Senga pitched in that game. He pitched a lot more use with his ghost fork, more with his fastball, less sweepers, less sliders. Then you get Clay Holmes, who mostly came out of Coors Field in the bullpen. That was, again, very sparingly because the Yankees, of course, were in the American League, Rockies in the National League. They don't play each other that often. So when Clay Holmes comes to pitch out of Coors Field, it's in the bullpen. It's for about 1 inning. He's now starting. So this is his first time ever starting at Coors Field. So this is going to be a bit of a challenge for Clay Holmes. And you kind of saw it, gave up 9 hits in 6 innings. He had to battle his way through each and every inning. Like I said, I don't think he had a 1-2-3 inning at all through 6, but he was able to battle it out. Only gave up the home run to McMahon. Still gave him the Mets 6 innings, some strikeouts. Despite the hits allowed, despite working his way out of jams, he still gave the Mets a quality outing and gave him 6. So in his first start at Coors Field. So that was a big thing for Clay. And again, like I mentioned about the Mets starting rotation, You gotta like what you see out of Clay Holmes. You really do. And it's something that, again, I cautioned about Clay Holmes going into this, going as a starter. I cautioned about it. I wasn't sure. Me and many others not sure about Clay Holmes as a starting pitcher. You know, and there was, of course, the whole reports of, well, if Clay struggles, they'll just send him to the bullpen. And Clay was one of those pitchers. Was one of those pitchers that needed to pitch well with the injuries to Sean Manaea and Frankie Montas. And of course with Kodai Senga coming back off the injury last year, and you didn't know how many innings he would get to start the year, how many his pitch limits, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it was important for someone like Clay Holmes to kind of come out there and show the Mets like, yeah, he's a quality starting pitcher. And that's what Clay Holmes has done. That's what he's done. He is shown to this point that he's a pretty solid quality starting pitcher, and he did it again on Saturday. Sunday, the Mets win the game 8-1. Sunday, Tyler McGill starts. The Mets are going for the sweep. It's not only a sweep of the series, but a season sweep of the Rockies again. Got to take care of the business. You got to take care of your business. You got to beat the opponent you got to beat. And this was a game again where the Mets, hey, got to win. You take 2 out of 3, of course, but again, with this being a team like the Rockies, you got to sweep them. You're a team like the Mets. You face the Rockies. You got to go in there and you got to sweep them. It'd be a bit disappointing if you only walked out with 2 out of 3. You always take 2 out of 3 in a series, but you needed to, against a team like the Colorado Rockies, you need to sweep them. Excuse me, and that's what the Mets did. They went out there on Sunday and they took it to him right off the bat. Second inning, Jeff McNeil hits a home run, and they're off to the races from there. Francisco Alvarez gets an RBI single, and then Pete Alonso. Pete Alonso, Pete Alonso, and more Pete Alonso. He hits 2 home runs. Jeff McNeil hits another home run. Francisco Alvarez hits a home run. His first home run. Francisco Alvarez. Good for him to have a nice 2 RBI day, and good for him to get a home run, another home run off his belt, because he hadn't had one since he first came back off the IL against the Washington Nationals. And I'm pretty sure that was his first game back. It was either his first or his second game back. It was the opposite field in Washington against the Nationals. And that was one of his, again, either first game back, second game back. So, but he hadn't hit a home run since. Again, that was in late April, early May. So it'd been a while since Francisco Alvarez hit a home run. So that, again, the game was out of reach, of course, but that was good to see. It was good to see Alvarez. He took one to center field in Coors Field. So that was good to see. He hits a home run. Juan Soto, second day, who after not having a 3-hit game at all through his first season as a Met, he gets 2 3-hit games in the last 3 days. And not only does he get 3 hits in this game on Sunday, he gets on base all 6 times he stepped up to the plate. Juan Soto got on base all 6 times. He got on base not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, not 5, not 6 times. He got on base all 6 times. 3 singles, 3 walks from Juan Soto. Impressive stuff from Juan Soto. And his second 3-hit game in the last 3 days after he took an 0-4 with a walk on Saturday. And then Jeff McNeil hits his second home run of the day. The Mets get 2 guys who have 2 home run days, both Pete Alonso and Jeff McNeil. And then Brett Beatty a home run. He gets off the schneid a bit because he's been slumping a bit as recently over the last few days or last couple week or so. Beatty gets a home run. And the Mets offense, again, did what they had to do against the Rockies and the Rocky pitching. And they went from, again, we talked about before, but they went from not scoring many runs, 0 for 10, 0 for 9 on Friday, and having to battle it out and squeak out a win because of Pete Alonso and Francisco Lindor on Friday. And they come back out there the next 2 days, and they did what they had to do. And they scored and scored and scored and scored. 21 runs in the last 2 days. And actually, I think the Mets also had, against the Rockies, I think the Mets also had 5 in the series with in the season series with the Rockies, the season series. The Mets had about 4 or 5 games. They played 6 times. 4 or 5 of those games, the Mets hit 3 home runs in each of them. 3 home runs in each of them. Yeah, that's good to see. But they came out there over on Saturday and Sunday and they scored 21 runs combined. 8 runs on Saturday, 13 runs on Sunday. Let me get the hits out. 21 runs Saturday and Sunday. They had 12 hits on Sun. They had 12 hits, excuse me, on Saturday. They had 17 hits on Sunday. So, you know, they did what they had to do, and their offense got going. This is again, I know it's the Rockies, but this is the kind of stuff you want to see from this offense. You want to see this stuff from this offense. You want to see them. You want to see them hit. You want to see them do well. You want to see them show their potential. You want to see them score runs. You want to see them, you know, score runs, scoring position. Let me pop up the runs in scoring position. On Sunday, they were 5 for 13 runs scoring position, but that's also because they hit a lot of home runs. And then on Saturday, they were again, well, actually it's not as impressive, but 3 for 14, but still home runs. So again, they hit some home runs that offset it. Solo home run by Ronnie Mauricio, solo home run by Jared Young, Jeff McNeil. So they kind of offset it. So, but that's what they can do. They're capable of this. They're capable of this kind of offensive performances every single day. They're capable of this kind of performance every single day. I know it's the Rockies. I know it's Coors Field, and the ball flies there, but this is the stuff they're capable of doing. They're capable of being a very, 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 very good offense. They're capable of being a very good offense. I think they showed that the last 2 games. Again, they're not going to play at Coors Field every day. Can only wish, but they can't. But this is the kind of stuff they're capable of being. This is not an offense that should be, amongst the lowest in batting average of runners in scoring position. This is not an offense that should be, you know, you know, looking for power, so to speak. Aside from Pete Alonso, and Francisco Lindor, and a little bit of Brandon Nimmo and Juan Soto, the Mets offense has lacked power. Alvarez is not really hit for power as much. Mark Antos is not hit for power as much. Starling Marte is not really he's more of a 10 to 12 home run guy, so you're not going to get much power out of him anyway. They've gotten some home runs lately out of Beatty, but he's not someone that you look at and go, oh yeah, he's a 25 home run guy. Maybe he can be one day, but Beatty hasn't shown that. Um, Acuna is not a power hitting guy. Uh, still Ronnie Mauricio, you still have to be determined. Tyrone Taylor is not a home run guy. He's a line drive hitter. So again, the Mets kind of don't really have Juan Soto has 11 home runs, but he really hasn't gotten on a power streak yet. He does have 2 games with 2 home runs each, but he hasn't really gotten on a power streak yet. But he's been red hot lately. He's doing really well lately, but the power, still is coming along. He hit a home run against the Rockies in Citi Field. He hit a home run against the Dodgers. So the power is still kind of coming along for Juan Soto. But right now, he is hitting the ball really well over the past 10 or 11 or so games. But aside from Pete and Lindor, mostly Pete, the Mets really haven't shown much power. But they're there. Like, again, Alvarez is a guy that hit 25 or so home runs 2 years ago. Mark Vientos hit 25, 6, 7 last year, and that was with him really getting going around late May. Mark Vientos. And he's had his struggles this season. So, but you like to see guys like Jeff McNeil have, a couple home runs over the weekend. You like to see Ryan Mauricio hit a third deck home run. You like to see Jared Young show his power potential, which is what the Mets liked out of him. What they liked out of Jared Young was his power swing. He swings hard and he goes for it all every time he goes for it every time he sees the pitch. Jared Young is a hit the ball hard guy. So they like his power, that's about it. McNeil is not someone you're looking to see hit home runs, but he tries to hit home runs, but he needs to focus more on being a line drive hitter. But Jeff wants to hit for power. We've known that about Jeff for a while now. So it was, but it was splits, and it was great to see Alvarez finally get another home run. You know, he's had his struggles all season long to this point, had another season missing time due to injuries. Luis Torrens has really jumped in and has really established himself as the guy who probably should be playing a catcher more often than Alvarez, even though for the future, realistically speaking, if you're the Mets, no offense to Luis Torrens, you want that to be Alvarez, a 23, 24, 25-year-old kid who hit 23 home runs just 2 years ago. You want him to be the future. The catcher position has been a carousel for the Mets since Mike Piazza, after the 2005 season. They've had Paul Duca, Ramon Castro, Travis d'Arnaud, um, Anthony Recker, Wilson Ramos, uh, James McCann, Brian Schneider, so on and so forth. It's been a carousel of catchers since Mike Piazza after 2005 when he left in free agency to go to the San Diego Padres. It's been a whole roll, and if you were the Mets, you were hoping Alvarez would be that guy 2 years ago, but the injuries the last 2 years have slowed him down. Performance has slowed him down. His approach to the plate, a very heavy free swinger. So again, I'm not saying Alvarez. So again, I'm not saying Alvarez's performance on Sunday is going to all of a sudden says, oh yeah, he should start every day. But it's been that kind of year for him, and with Torrens really emerging, over the last 2 years since he came over to the Mets. Actually, today is the anniversary of, I think, the play. Everyone points to Grimace. Everyone points to Grimace, or you know the Francisco Lindor meeting, and yeah, that's the true genesis of last year's run, the meeting that Lindor and the team had. But I think on the field, the true or game, I should say, the true beginning of the Mets run last year was the play in London, play that Luis Torrens made when they got him, double play in London to beat the Phillies. That was the game and the moment that I think turned the season around. You know, it was such a big play and such a big win against a team that was the class of the division at the time, and they would end up winning the division. But they went to London. They lost the game the day before. It was a two-game series. They lost the game the day before, and it looked like they were going to blow the second game. And then the little dribbler happens. Torrens steps at home, throws the first, and he makes the play for the Mets to win the game. And I think that from that play on, the Mets season really turned around. And Luis Torrens was really the genesis of it, I think. Now it's not as fun because Grimace, but your OMG, but and Jose Iglesias, but on the field, the game, the moment, I think it was that game. So really, ever since, Torrens has really emerged as a guy who deserves more catching time. And this season, Torrens has done it again. He's been good at the plate. He's been good behind the plate. Alvarez has had his struggles at the plate, hitting wise. He's had his struggles behind the plate, not throwing guys out. Him and Torrens have actually been pretty good throwing guys out. And that was a struggle for Alvarez last year. But, you know, whether it's pass balls from Alvarez and him trying to frame a little too much, that has still been a thing for Alvarez even this season. It was a thing from last year. It's been a thing for him now this season. So it's important for Alvarez to get going, and hopefully a game like yesterday can truly show him, because he had a bad game on Friday night and a bad, at bad an approach with the bases loaded and one out. But hopefully for Alvarez and for the Mets, because they really need him to be that guy. It's no slight towards Torrens. He's a fine, solid veteran catcher. And the Mets, they deal cash considerations for him. That's another David Stearns, great move by David Stearns to get Torrens over, and he's proven to be a very, very good piece for this team. But Torrens should be a guy that's more of a depth backup catcher piece, not a feature starter. That guy needs to be out. It's not that it shouldn't be Alvarez, it needs to be Alvarez. So hopefully for the Mets, Alvarez's game on Sunday, the RBI single, the home run to center field, hopefully it can turn his season around because he really needs it. If not, the Mets are going to have to continue to play Torrens more often, so we'll see. Pitching wise, Tyler McGill had a very, like Clay Holmes, a very weird outing, but not in the sense that where Clay, you look at it with Clay and you go, okay, hey, it was still a good performance. He gave up 9 hits, but it was still a good performance. Tyler McGill, he's had a good year. He deserves a lot of credit. Again, he was another guy that was asked to step up when the injuries happened. Paul Blackburn, Frankie Montas, Sean Manaea, like Clay Holmes. McGill was another guy who had to step up and give the Mets some depth in the rotation. And McGill has done that. He has done that. But he does have the tendency of inconsistencies, and he does have the tendency to show why he's more of a 5 or a 6 in the rotation, despite his talents, despite his stuff. I think his stuff is terrific when he's on, especially his fastball. His fastball, I think, is terrific. But he can get a bit too reliant on his breaking stuff, McGill. But his fastball is terrific, and he has good stuff. And you're waiting for him to go from 5 to a 3, at least, maybe even a 2, because he's got good stuff. However, there's always that glimpse of McGill where you see the greatness and you see how good he is and you see the stuff and you go, man, he's on a roll. And then it could turn around and you get the McGill that you got in the 5th inning of this ball game. I know it's hard to complain about a game where the Mets won 13-5, but you do look at Tyler McGill and go, man, how did you go from 4 no-hit innings where you look terrific? Not to say I thought he was gonna throw a no-hitter, but with this being the Colorado Rockies, and it's always hard to throw a no-hitter in Coors Field, but with this being the Rockies offense, I was like, man, he might he might have a chance here. I don't think he will throw a no-hitter, but he might have a chance. Because again, circumstances, right? Even though it is Coors Field, you look at the Colorado Rockies and you go, he might do it. Wouldn't surprise me. Maybe a little bit because, again, the ballpark, but he can do it. And he was cruising through 4. He was cruising through 4. At the very least, I thought 7. He was cruising through 4. He was cruising. And then the 5th inning happens. And gives up the double to Hilliard. Another couple of hits here and there. Walks. And before you know it, his pitch count goes from pretty good to pretty high. And he gives up a couple of runs. The Met lead gets trimmed down a bit. And before you know it, he's out after 5. And I think, again, he got the win. Tyler McGill got the win. And his ERA, let me check. His ERA now goes to 3.76. Hey, look, if you were to tell me at this time of the year, Tyler McGill would have, and he'd be starting, the majority, all season long, that he would have an ERA of 3.76, I think you would sign up for it, of course. You'd sign up for it. But it's just, you're waiting for him to truly, again, he's a young guy coming out from the farm. You're waiting for him to truly blossom. And there are moments where he looks fantastic, like against the Dodgers. The Dodgers was the reverse of this game. His last start against the Dodgers was the reverse. It was a reverse. The Dodger game, he should not have gone for more than 6. He gave up 4 innings in the first. He gave up 4 runs in the first inning. He should have been out after like 3. McGill should have been out at the game after like 3 innings. But he went 6. He turned it around. He was great the rest of the way, and he gave the Mets a chance to win. In this game against the Rockies, he was phenomenal for the first 4 innings, pitching a no-hitter. I thought he had a chance at it. And then he implodes in the 5th. He has his 1 bad inning. And instead of going six, seven, maybe even eight. He goes five. And then Paul Blackburn has to take, and again, both McGill and Blackburn were fortunate that the Mets offense was phenomenal that day on Sunday, and they were up 8-0 when McGill struggled in the fifth inning. But Blackburn comes in there. He kind of battles and struggles his way through four to finish the game. But again, the Met offense was so good that it kind of didn't matter. But you do kind of take note because, the Mets kind of need Paul Blackburn to be good out of the bullpen. The Mets could use another arm out of the bullpen. I think I said in the last show, but the Mets kind of need another arm in that bullpen. And that's mainly because there's no AJ Minter. AJ Minter's, AJ Minter is out for the season. The Mets kind of do need another arm in that bullpen. They kind of do. So if you're the Mets, you're hoping Paul Blackburn can kind of, not be AJ Minter because AJ Minter is AJ Minter, but you're kind of hoping he can offset it. The Mets are missing a quality lefty. Jorge Castillo's been solid. Jorge Castillo, I think, has been relatively solid as a lefty out of the bullpen. But again, I think the Mets could use another arm in that pen. And, hopefully it could be Daniel Nunez. Hopefully it could be Daniel Nunez because he was so good for them last year before his injury. And then he comes back this year and he didn't look ready. He clearly didn't look ready and he was not throwing strikes. And the Mets had to send him back down. So that was a bit disappointing to see. That was a bit disappointing from Daniel Nunez. But you're hoping Paul Blackburn can help out this bullpen. And he kind of struggled. He was great against the Dodgers, struggled and had to battle his way here against the Rockies. So I think you'd hope for just a little bit better. Again, you can't complain too much because Mets offense was so good, but you kind of were hoping for a little better from Paul Blackburn. And yeah, as good as McGill was with the first four innings, you're kind of hoping his start would go longer than five because again, he was so good through the first four, and not risk the chance of the Mets using up their bullpen in a game where they're up 8-0 in the fifth inning when McGill gave up 2 runs and kind of lost it there. So, but to go back to the offense for a bit, we have to talk about Pete Alonso again. Pete Alonso made history on Sunday, 2 home runs. He tied David Wright with the first, and he passed David Wright with the second. Tip of the cap to you, Pete. He is now second all time in home runs in Mets history. And he's going to pass Darryl Strawberry. Whether it happened when it's pretty incredible because Pete is now on a home run tear after going on the longest home run drought of his career. So it's I guess I looked at it. I looked at Pete going on the home run drought, and I was like, yeah, of course Pete Alonso is going on his longest home run drought of his career. Of course, the season where Pete Alonso is looking to be the number one on the Mets all-time home run list. Yeah, of course he would go on his longest home run drought, but he has snapped out of his longest home run drought with going on another home run tear. And that's Pete Alonso. That's just who he is. He's very hot and cold. He's been very hot and cold throughout the course of his career, but we have not seen Pete play like this. I said this in the last show. We have not seen Pete play like this since 2022. And this was 2022 and then some. And on Sunday, he showed it again. This is not just 2022 Pete Alonso. This is 2022 and then some and more and exactly what you want out of Pete. He is playing like an MVP. And in my honest opinion, he is the National League MVP. I know a Mets fan is saying Pete Alonso is the National League MVP. But if you look at it, if you look at the numbers, I know Freddie Freeman's got the better batting average. I know Shohei Ohtani is leading the National League in home runs. But look at the numbers of runners in scoring position. He's leading the league. He's leading the league in RBI. He's leading the league in extra base hits. Look at his WAR. Look at his WAR. Look at his OPS plus. Look at the numbers. He is right up there with those guys. And again, where would this team be without him right now? Because of their struggles with runners in scoring position. That includes Francisco Lindor, even with his clutchness. That includes Juan Soto and his offense and his inconsistencies, hot and cold at the plate. That includes Mark Vientos, who has struggled this season, and Alvarez, who has struggled this season. That includes Brandon Nimmo, who has struggled with runners in scoring position. That includes Jeff McNeil, former batting champion. He's also struggled with runners in scoring position this season. Look at Pete. Where would this team be without him? Where would they be without? We've been saying all season long to this point, where would they be without the starting pitching? And I 100% agree. Where would the Mets be without the starting pitching? But I also want to say is where would the Mets be and where would this Mets offense? Where would this Mets offense be without Pete Alonso? And you go back to the offseason when they resigned him to a 2-year contract with the opt-out after next season, and you know where it's going. You know where it's going. He's going to opt out, and he's going to want a big contract. And if you're the Mets, look, you might have to just, it might be an overpay. It might be an overpay because, again, the last 2 years, Pete had struggled 217 in 2000 and 2023, 240 last year, inconsistencies at the plate, a lot of strikeouts, a lot of chasing. You might, but now he's having a career year, so you might have to do a bit of an overpay. David Stearns might not want to do it, but Steve Cohen might. But we'll see. We're still months away from that. We'll find out when we get there. We'll certainly talk about that on the show when we get there. Uh, we shouldn't be talking, so we'll get there when we get there. We'll talk about it on the show when we get there. But Pete Alonso is showing you he's worth whatever penny, dollar, whatever that he deserves, and he's doing it this season, and he deserves credit for it. He deserves credit for it. And Pete, in my opinion, deserves to be the favorite for National League MVP. If you look at Pete Alonso's statistics, or on Sunday, Pete Alonso, 3 hits, 3 runs scored, 2 home runs, 4 RBIs. Pete Alonso, his OPS is now 990. And on June, what's today? 9th? On June 9th, on a Monday, on the Mets off day, as they travel back to Citi Field to start a 6-game homestand beginning on Tuesday, tomorrow, against the Washington Nationals, 3-game series with the Washington Nationals from Tuesday to Thursday. We'll preview that later. And a 3-game series with the Tampa Bay Rays. We will talk about that series on Thursday night on MazzaOnMets after we recap the series with the Washington Nationals. On June 7th, or excuse me, June 9th, Pete Alonso, or June 10th, tomorrow when the Mets play baseball again, Pete Alonso has a 301 batting average. And I know you'll look at me and say, wait a minute, Freddie Freeman's got a batting average above 350. And you're right. However, if you were to look at a Met fan and tell you, if you go to a Met fan and say, hey, Pete Alonso on June 10th is going to have an over 300 batting average, you would say, as a Met fan, nah. Pete's a great player and he's a bopper and he hits home runs, but he's not a guy who bats over 300, before the All-Star break or shortly before the All-Star break. He's not that guy. Pete Alonso's not that guy. He doesn't bat 301 over 300. He's not that guy. And he's not. To be fair, he's not. He's more of a guy who bats 250, 260, 270. That was his career year, 2022, 270. That was his career year, 270. He's not a guy who bats over 300. But here we are entering June 10th, tomorrow, midway through the third month of the season, and Pete Alonso's batting over 300. He's batting over 300. And I think that's a big accomplishment for him. That's something he's been searching for really his entire career since he came up to the big leagues in 2019. He's been searching for that because for his first several years, we've known him as, you know, he's the guy who hits a ton of home runs. He hits a ton of home runs, and his defense is average at best. His defense this year, though, has been pretty good. Not saying he's Keith Hernandez at first base or John Olerud at first base, or Freddie Freeman at first base, but he's played a pretty good defense at first base this year. I know there was the errors. There was the throwing error in Yankee Stadium. There was the throwing error in Washington. He does still struggle throwing to first or home, but he has been pretty good defensively at first base, and that says a lot considering Francisco Lindor plays shortstop. And Lindor's had a bit of he's had a bit of a shaky off year. So I would say off year. I wouldn't say a bad year defensively for Lindor, but certainly an off year for him defensively at shortstop. And the Mets have had problems infield wise on defense this year. They've had a lot of problems with the infield. He has still been one of the bright spots, even with the throwing errors in Washington and against the Yankees. He's been pretty good defensively. He has. So you add all that up, plus his offense, plus the home runs, plus the RBIs, plus the clutch, plus the runners in scoring position numbers, plus the extra base hits, plus the walks, plus less strikeouts. He still tends to strike out, but he's not striking out as much as he did before. His eye at the plate and his approach to the plate has been the best, I think, of his entire career since opening day against the Houston Astros. His approach to the plate has been the best of his career. And that's something that he wasn't really doing throughout his career, and especially the last 2 years. Now his approach is different. Now he's got a great eye at the plate, and I think that adds a lot to not just him for his career, but also for his future when he does opt out. And again, we'll get there when we get there. We'll talk about it when we get there. But it is something to look at when you invest in Pete Alonso. It's something to look at. Hey, his eye at the plate is pretty good this year. It's gotten a lot better than it was in years past. But overall, a tremendous performance by Pete Alonso on Sunday. 2 home runs. And again, congratulations to him for passing David Wright. David Wright sent they had a good message queued up. They had a message from David Wright queued up when that moment did happen. Kind of wish it wasn't Citi Field. I was talking about it with my brother, and we were both like, man, it'd be really nice if Pete Alonso can break that record at Citi Field, because Citi Field could use a nice moment like that. Plus, the Citi Field did have the moment where Pete set the single season rookie home run record back in 2019. So it'd be nice for them to get. It'd be nice for the ballpark and for the Met fans who show up that day, for the Met fans watching on TV, and for Gary, Keith, and Ron on SNY, to get that moment. Gary, Keith, and Ron didn't, as we know, famously, Gary, Keith, and Ron didn't get that moment when he broke the rookie home run record. That was Fox who got that, not SNY. That was Fox. So it'd be great for everybody if he can do it at Citi Field and he can break the record there. But for now, for Sunday, Pete now passes David Wright for second all time in the Mets home run list, and he's only about 9 away from Darryl Strawberry. So congratulations to Pete Alonso. Hats off to him on his pursuit of the Mets all-time home run record. And, he's had a heck of a year to this point. He's had a heck of a year, great year to this point, and he has continued to carry this offense and this team on his back since day one. I think, it was special when Francisco Lindor did it last year. It was very special when Lindor did it last year, but it's extra special with Pete simply because he's a homegrown guy. I'm not one of those guys that will always say, "Oh yeah, this guy's homegrown. He's homegrown." That's what me. I'm not usually someone that likes to point that out and go, "Oh yeah, he's homegrown, so it's special." He's homegrown. But I do think there is that little bit of extra. There is that little bit of extra, a little bit of extra to it, right? Lindor, what he did last year was outstanding and amazing. But what Pete's doing, and I felt Lindor should have been MVP last year, but what Pete's doing, it's like, hey, he's homegrown, drafted, developed, came up from the farm, and now he's carrying the team. And he's been with the team since 2019 when he was first called up and he took the first base gig. Um, and he's now having a career year where you look at him and go, hey, he's an MVP candidate right now. He's not just the best hitter on the Mets. He's one of the best hitters, if not the best hitter in the whole National League, and one of the best hitters in all of Major League Baseball right now this season. He's not just the best right now. He's not just the best hitter on the Mets. It's not just the fact that he's the best hitter on the Mets. He's the best hitter in the National League and one of the best hitters in all of baseball right now. So that's what makes this season even more spectacular. You know, he's just having that kind of year. You know, he's just having that kind of year. So, so what Pete's done has been incredible. You know, what Pete's done has been incredible. So, and he continues to mash. And if you're the Mets, you just hope that this keeps going because again, I said before, Pete has the tendency to go cold. He has a tendency to go cold. You just hope that the cold streaks don't last as long and the hot streaks keep coming and coming. So, so you know, that's what happened before. He was super, super hot. Then he got a bit cold, had the homerless drought, had the homerless streak, but now he's super hot again. The cold streak didn't last as long, but now the hot streak has continued and he's been on a tear. So, uh, bottom line overall, the Mets did what they had to do. They swept the Colorado Rockies. They had a very successful road trip, 5-2 on this road trip. They split the Dodgers. I mean, and again, don't want to ask for too much, but split the Dodgers and lost two games that they should have won. Lost two games they should have won. But bottom line, 5-2 road trip, split the Dodgers. If you were to say, hey, they would split the Dodgers, you would sign up for it. They did that. They took the season series after they beat the Dodgers 2-3 at Citi Field. They win the season series from the Dodgers. They go to Colorado. They sweep them. Hats off to them. Successful road trip. And now the Mets are now on their off day today as they head back to Citi Field to play a series with the Washington Nationals. We'll do a quick look at where things stand. Again, it's still not early to look at the standings. I'm not one to look at the standings every, in April or May or even June. But since July is coming up and it is mid-June, since it is mid-June and July will be coming up shortly, will be coming up soon. We have now reached the time where we've now reached the time where you can look at the standings just a little bit, not a lot, just a little quick open the door and a little quick open the book, a little quick just open the newspaper, a little quick open the newspaper and go, oh, okay. But as things are right now, the Mets sit at 42-24, 18 games over 500. We look at the rest of the division standings. The Miami Marlins, 24-39, they're 16.5 games back. They got swept by the Colorado Rockies very famously before the Rockies faced the Mets just now. And then surprisingly, the surprise of the entire division, the Atlanta Braves, 27-37, 14 games back of the New York Mets. Followed by the Washington Nationals, who've been, again, a very pesky baseball team. This is a team that is on the rise, and this is a team that's on the rise, and they're going to be pretty good in about a year or 2 or 3 years. This is a team with a very bright future, and they're 30-35. Again, if you were to tell a Nationals fan this is where you would be at this point, they would probably sign up for it. But they're 30-35, 11.5 back of the Mets. But they come into City Field, and on Tuesday we'll preview it. We'll preview it shortly, but they come into City Field. You know, you look at them. They come into City Field and they're nothing to sniff at. Mets should again. The Mets need to take care of business and beat them, but they're nothing to sniff at. This is a team that's tough, and they're going to look to play spoiler for in a lot of these division games, whether they play the Mets or they play the Phillies. So when we get to that time of year, when we get to August, September, watch out for the Nationals to make an impact in whether it's the division standings or the wild card standings. Followed by the Phillies at 37 and 28. They're 4.5 back, and they are really uh they've hit a tough patch right now. They've hit a struggle right now, the Phillies. They've lost, I believe, 9 of the last 10. They just got swept by the Pittsburgh Pirates, which I believe was the first time in 10 years they've ever gotten swept by the Pirates. Their offense has struggled a bit. Bryce Harper is now on the injured list again. But this is a Phillies team that's, again, they've hit a bit of a tough patch, and the Mets will face the Phillies pretty shortly. In about a week, about next week. Next week after they play the Braves, and we'll talk about the Braves in a second, but they will play the Braves. The Mets will play the Phillies twice, I believe, after they play the Braves. So they go to Philadelphia for a series in that one. And that will be an opportunity for the Mets if the Phillies are still kind of playing like this, which we'll see. The Phillies are too good to struggle like this. They're too good. They're too talented. But even if they are, you know, whether they are or whether they aren't, it's a chance for the Mets to, you know, it's a chance for the Mets to kind of not pull away, but you know, get some more comfort in the division. But as the Mets currently stand, they're 42 and 24, 4.5 up with the Phillies. And yeah, let's piggyback to the Braves. 27 and 37, 14 games back. Maybe it's the Met fan in me. Maybe it's the man who has watched the Braves and their success for so long. You know, I'm not buying it. I know everyone is ready to write them off. I know everyone's saying that it's over for the Braves. I know everyone is ready to say but you know, the Mets were in that spot. The Mets were in this exact predicament that the Braves were in last year, 27 and 37 in June. The Mets were 11 games under 500 on June 3rd last year, with a team not even close to as talented as the Braves were. I know the Mets made the run to the NLCS, but you look at it on paper. Look at the 2024 Mets on paper when the season began. Look at the 2024 Braves on paper when the season began. Tell me who was more talented. The Braves were. They have a much more talented team this time right now than the Mets did at the beginning of last year when they were struggling. I just feel in the bottom of my heart that when we get to August and September and it's time for the push to the playoffs, the Atlanta Braves will be there. I just still feel that way. I know they're struggling. I know Spencer Strider has been struggling coming off the Tommy John. You know, I know Snickers had a bad year. I know the whole team has had a bad year, but I don't believe that this is who they are. They are much better than this in 27 and 37 and 14 games back. I truly believe that when we get to August and September, it's going to be it's going to be the Mets, the Phillies, and it's going to be the Braves for the division title. I still believe that. I am not ready to say, I am not ready to look at the Braves and go, they're not going to come back from it. I truly think they're going to come back. So I think the Mets will have the battle out with both the Phillies and the Braves. I don't think it's just going to be the Phillies now. I think it's going to be both the Mets and the Braves. We'll see as the season progresses. We'll see as things go. We'll see where things stand. We'll see where things stand in August, September. But count me as one of those that is not ready to look at the Braves and go, count me as one of those that looks at the Braves and go, they will turn this thing around. They're too good and too talented not to turn it around. Too good and too talented not to turn it around. and I think they will. But back to the Mets, as they sit in first place right now. They start on Tuesday a three-game series of the Washington Nationals. We'll start with game one, 7 o'clock, 7:10 Eastern on Tuesday. Griffin Canning, my guy, my boy, the man, the myth, the legend, the man who has taken on the Los Angeles Dodgers and taken on the New York Yankees and taken on the Chicago Cubs offense, and he has pitched phenomenally against them. He enters the game with a 6-2 record, a 2.90 ERA, and he will face Mackenzie Gore, who has pitched really well for the Nationals, 2.87 ERA. And Mackenzie Gore has had some really good games against the New York Mets. But that'll be an interesting game, an interesting pitching matchup in that one. Griffin Canning versus Mackenzie Gore. Then followed by Wednesday night, 7 o'clock, David Peterson against Cole Irvin. David Peterson, again, Mr. Consistent, a guy who has been rock solid for them, giving them innings, giving them quality outings. He'll go on Wednesday night. And then Thursday afternoon, 1:10 p.m., Kodai Senga will take the mound for the Mets. And that'll be an interesting start for Senga. He pitched well against Colorado, but not great against Colorado. I thought he'd be a lot better. But again, like I said, it was his first start at Coors Field, so I do have to there is a bit of a bit of a mulligan there. But even still, I did kind of expect a little bit better under Kodai Senga on against the Rockies, but now he takes them out against the Washington Nationals. He will be opposed by Mike Soroka, 3-3 with a 4.86 ERA. My takeaway from this series is, like I said before, Nationals are tough, they're pesky, they are ready to play. This is a team that's, again, going to be on the rise. They're going to be right there in a year or two or three. They got good players like James Wood. This is a team that is not there yet, but they're going to get there. And I think the Nationals are struggling a bit right now. Their offense is struggling, coming into the series. But Citi Field, New York Mets are hot. Nationals might wake up for this series and go, okay, hey, time to play. Hey, we beat these guys twice in a 4-game series not too long ago, and they came back in one of those games. The Mets were up 6-0, 7-1, and the Nationals came all the way back in the late innings and ended up winning the game. And they took another one from them. They beat them again 2 days. 2 days before that. That was when the Mets came back down 4-0, took the lead. And then Ryan Stanek came in to close that game because Edwin Diaz wasn't available. He had the calf issue, I believe, at the time. He had a calf injury, I believe, at the time. Stanek came in, blew the save, and the Mets and the Nationals won the game. So the Nationals come into this series going, hey, Mets may be good. They may be 42-24, but hey, we can play with them. We split them last time. We can play with them. So the Mets got to be ready and prepared as they have an off day, come back tomorrow night. They got to be ready and prepared to play a division rival that's going to want to slow them down a bit. And the Nationals, again, pesky, and they're going to come ready to play, even though their offense is struggling a bit. So this will be on the Mets starting rotation in this series to continue their momentum and to keep the Nationals offense at bay from getting hot. And against some good Nationals pitching like Mackenzie Gore and Cole Irvin, and even especially Mackenzie Gore. Again, falls in the Mets offense, score with runners scoring position. It falls on their offense every time to score with runners in scoring position. If you do that, you'll win this series. If you don't, the Nationals will take the series and they'll beat them. And you'll have a bit of a letdown series. But interesting. It's an interesting series because again, it's division, but it's also, again, the Nationals are. I don't think the Nationals are intimidated. I don't think the Nationals look at the Mets and go, "Oh man, they're super good." No, they go. I think the Nationals look at the Mets and go, "No, we can beat these guys." I think they look at the Mets and go, "We can beat them." So I think the Mets have to come in, be prepared, stay hot, and continue to win some ball games. And and then it doesn't get any easier for the Mets. We'll talk more about it later, but they get the Tampa Bay Rays, who are red hot right now. They get the Rays over the weekend on Father's Day weekend. And then the big stretch at the Braves, Tuesday through Thursday, at the Phillies next weekend. And then they're back home to play the Braves. That's a 4 game series. They get the Pirates in the middle of this. They do get the Pirates at Pittsburgh in the middle of all this. And then they play Milwaukee Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday at the beginning of July. And then July 4th weekend, they play the Yankees again. And I'm sure that series will be very interesting. But so no, it's a very key stretch for the Mets coming up. It's not just it's the Nationals, pesky young team going to be coming ready to play. It's the Rays who are red hot right now. It's the Phillies, it's the Braves twice. So Mets enter after so again, the Mets will enter a very tough stretch from here on out. They got their series with the Rockies, 2 series with the Rockies, and they beat the Rockies all 6 times. So that was key. They got those series with the Dodgers and beat them, 4 out of 7. But still, very interesting, tough set of series is coming up. I would even say Pittsburgh is going to be tough because it's at Pittsburgh. They have good pitching, and it might run to Paul Skeens again, just like they did in the series at Citi Field. But we'll get there when we get there. The Mets begin a series with the Washington Nationals starting tomorrow from Tuesday to Thursday. We'll see how they do. And that'll wrap it up for this episode of MazzaOnMets. We'll be back on Thursday night or Friday morning to recap the Mets series with the Washington Nationals for episode 3. And I'm hoping I plan on launching Mazza on Ravens either tomorrow or Wednesday. So certainly be on the lookout for that. We'll talk all things Ravens, all things Baltimore Ravens offseason news. And another it's interesting. I mentioned Aaron Rodgers signing with the Steelers and the Rashad Bateman contract that we were going to talk about. Well, now we have more stuff to talk about with the Ravens because Jari Alexander, the Green Bay Packers, they couldn't figure out a trade for him, and he just got released. So one of the top corners in all of football, and someone the Ravens we know have interest in, is now freely available in the open market. Actually, I saw a report that said the Buffalo Bills were trying to work a trade for him. So might be Ravens and Bills. We'll find out once again. Ravens and the Bills to see who gets Jari Alexander. But that'll be for Mazza on Ravens on Tuesday or Wednesday. I'm hoping to launch it either. I'm hoping to launch it tomorrow. I'd like to launch it tomorrow. Let's launch it tomorrow. Let's go for tomorrow. I'm gonna launch. We'll launch Mazza on Ravens tomorrow. But that'll do it for this edition of MazzaOnMets. We will be back Thursday night to recap the series with the Nationals and talk more about their series with the Tampa Bay Rays. I've been your host, Evan Mazza, wishing you a very good, pleasant afternoon, and let's go Mets.